Okay, welcome everybody to the user group portion. Hopefully you all can see my smiling face. This is Pete Grammaticas from Sumo Logic. We are going to move on from the Workjam session that we had for the earlier portion of the day and move on to a 90-minute segment that is designed specifically for the core users of Sumo Logic, right? On with me, John, if you can switch the slide. Great. So on with me, on behalf of the Sumo team, right, covering Eastern Canada on the mid-market and our enterprise sections, we wanted to thank you for attending the Eastern Canada user group. So some of you, again, rolled right off the Workjam, and now we're looking forward to kind of jumping right into the user group. So we've been running these virtual user group sessions over probably the past 3 or 4 months, given the current situation in the world, and the feedback on them has really been tremendous and positive. As we're continuing to give our customers the chance to hear updates on the platform, allow some of you to actually hear from other actual customer stories from some of the other couple hundreds of customers in Eastern Canada that we've comprised over the past 7 or 8 years of being in business up in Canada. And one of our core mottos here at Sumo is really being in it with our customers. And these user groups are a very powerful way to exemplify this. So we got a lot of stuff to cover today. And joining us to really cover a very, very packed agenda, just kind of going from the top to the bottom. So first and foremost, yours truly, Pete Grammaticas. I am the director of the East Enterprise sales business here for the eastern portion of the Americas. Joining with me as kind of the co-MC is Chris Bowman. He's my counterpart who manages the Sumo Logic mid-market business in the same segment of Eastern North America. 3 other specific Sumos that you're going to be hearing from across the course of the user group. We're going to be hearing from Angad Singh. He's one of Sumo's senior product managers, giving a brief product roadmap update, as well as Eric von der Linden, who's one of the directors of our pre-sales organizations focused specifically on our very rapidly growing security business unit. And he's going to be coming on and discussing the new direction there and currently what we currently have out of the platform today and really what's coming down the pipe. And then ultimately what we're going to have 3 customers who are going to come on and really discuss and be sharing how, sharing their business and really how Sumo can impact it. So the customers that we're going to have is Milind Bhargava, who's the founder of Mjolnir Security. He's going to be joining us. Helen Ashton, one of the leads of enterprise application monitoring for Canadian Tire. And Jacob Verret, who is the VP of Information Security, DevOps, and Cloud Operations at Workjam. So those are 3 customers that are going to be joining us and kind of socializing how they're leveraging the technology. And then as we always do, right, because we are in it with our customers and we take the communities that we support and work with very, very seriously. To wrap this all up, we're going to have Lori Nikkel, the CEO from Second Harvest, one of the nonprofits locally in the Toronto area, to actually come on and share a little bit about her organization. So we're going to have some brief Q&A sessions. I think after each session, but we do have a lot of content to cover here. So please add your questions in. Hi, Helen, I see that. Please add your questions into the chat, and we will definitely be getting around to them as soon as we can. So why don't we kick this off, and let me turn this over to Angad Singh, again, Sumo Senior Product Manager, who's going to be giving a brief product roadmap update. Angad?
Thanks, Pete. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is a standard sort of disclaimer slide that we have to put in before giving you guys a product roadmap. This is to sort of let you know that some of the features that we are planning might be a little bit delayed, or there might be differences in the functionality as we are talking in this user conference with what the actual product looks like. So again, nothing sort of particular, but from a legal perspective, I have to show you guys. So moving on to the next slide. Before we jump into the actual product roadmap, I thought it's good to sort of reiterate a few sort of high-level notions first. I think we all sort of agree that cloud adoption is not just something that only a select companies are doing it, but it's a push more that a lot of organizations today are doing, and especially the troubling times that we are in, it has necessitated the use of the cloud and sort of ditch the old on-prem sort of a world. And I wanted to quickly highlight that how Sumo Logic is helping in that sort of a cloud journey for our customers. So we have three groups of customers that we support internally, or we try to group those customers into three segments. The first one is the cloud migration companies. These are traditional companies who have operated with traditional infrastructure, done pretty well, a lot of big companies, but now they want to slowly move over and adopt cloud and leverage the promises that come with the cloud, right? So you have Delta, Alaska Airlines, New York Times, all these organizations sort of have this approach of sort of trying to move to cloud, and Sumo is helping in that transformation by providing visibility and providing the monitoring and operational and security and intelligence for them to do that effectively. And then there are other companies that are cloud first, which have a mandate, they have a corporate mandate that anything that they build going forward will be built in cloud. And they'll have a plan for migrating their existing stuff as well. And then again, for these companies, we have some big customers who we partner with, who we help out to help them in realizing that goal of moving things to cloud. And then the last one on the list is cloud native, born and brought up in cloud companies like Sumo Logic itself, like who started their journey with cloud, right? And we provide all the tools, services, etc., needed for these companies to get the complete visibility to monitor their cloud environments. Right? So just to sort of reiterate our focus towards the cloud. Can we move to the next slide? And the other thing I wanted to talk about before I jump into the roadmap is how we think about our platform, the Sumo Logic platform. So you'll see this sort of model present in the subsequent section where I talk about what we delivered and what is coming out. So at Sumo, the way we think about our service is basically these 5 core elements. At the base here is the cloud native platform, the fundamental platform on which Sumo Logic is based, right? Our log analytics backend, our machine learning, our security first principle, right? Our multi-tenant approach, and the flexible licensing model to consume that services. That's the basic of consuming Sumo Logic today. That's the service that most of you guys use Sumo for today. And then on top of that, are there different layers? Like we provide global intelligence solution where we get we leverage insights from the SaaS platform that we are developing and surface interesting insights to our customers that would help them do operational analytics or security analytics or business intelligence in a better way. All right, so we leverage the power of SaaS to provide all of that. And then you have specific solutions for specific use cases, which is operational intelligence, security intelligence, and business intelligence. All right, so that's how we think about our service, and that's how you will see the roadmap being presented. Can we move to the next slide, please? Right, so this is what we delivered in FY21 and sort of carrying forward the theme of those buckets, so operational security, global intelligence, and continuous intelligence. On the operational side, we delivered the Kubernetes solution last year at Illuminate, which is our user conference for those of you who don't know. So that helps you get visibility into your Kubernetes environment. And if you are building your services using Kubernetes, then you can leverage that solution to monitor that infrastructure and get visibility into it. And with that, we did a bunch of other improvements as well, which is Prometheus support for metrics, single value metrics panel, and auto parsing of JSON capability within Sumo Logic. And then other enhancements were around automatically detecting and collecting CloudWatch tags so that you can easily use those tags to identify your entities, your logs and metrics within Sumo effectively. And then lastly, we also delivered an Atlassian solution, which is one sort of solution for the entire Atlassian suite of products, right? From project management to their CI/CD pipeline tools like Circle CI, and then towards the later half for continuous deployment, Atlassian has a couple of products like Jira ServiceNow and a couple of other things. So you have end-to-end solution that provides visibility into all of those Atlassian products. And then we also did a bunch of different released apps for specifically catered for operational intelligence space. I'll not go into details of each one of them, but there were a bunch of these apps released that extend the operational analytical capabilities of our platform to new sources. Similarly, on the security side also, we released a bunch of different apps for different services, security data sources and security services. And then we also released an AWS security quick start solution, which basically enables you to collect security data from a lot of different AWS services quickly, and then sets up all the dashboards and everything in a nice, clean way. So for you to onboard onto AWS security, the solution provides an easy way to do that. On the global intelligence side, we basically released 2 global intelligence apps, global intelligence app for Amazon Guard Duty and Amazon CloudTrail. So basically what these apps do is they look at other Sumo customers and try and identify interesting patterns, and then surface those patterns to you and see how you are performing in relation to those other customers. For example, are you seeing more denial of service attacks than other vendors? Do you have more open ports that have potential vulnerabilities than what we see with other customers? Things like that, things where we surface these interesting findings and present it to you so that you can figure out how you want to update your security posture based on that information. So those two apps were released from a global intelligence perspective. And this is something that no other vendor in this market provides this type of solution. So Sumo is the first vendor to do that. And lastly, on the continuous intelligence platform, we released a bunch of different capabilities. We provided a lot of new, we have this goal internally to be an API first sort of company, release all our features and stuff first in API, and then providing a UI experience to sort of allow customers to automate with Sumo Logic a lot more. So in continuing with that tradition, we released a bunch of APIs for some of the existing services that we have in Sumo, and there is plan to release a bunch more that I will cover in the subsequent section. On the collection side, we did a bunch of other improvements, specifically around data enrichment and field management. This now allows you to collect custom metadata or tag your logs with custom metadata so that you can get more, it makes it easier for you to identify, access, and query those logs later on, right? We also released log archiving in beta, which basically allows you to collect logs and then directly send them to an S3 bucket. Don't ingest those logs into Sumo, and then later on, if you decide you need those logs, you can rehydrate those logs back into Sumo Logic platform. And then we also released health events, which basically allows, which gives visibility into the health of your Sumo Logic collection. It tells you if your collectors are up and running or other services within Sumo are up and running and working correctly or not. This was released in beta. You have complete access to it as well. And lastly, transparent syslog forwarding was also released. Couple of other things that were done, and I'll sort of, in the interest of time, I'll quickly highlight the major ones. We released a new data tier called infrequent data tier that provides all the log analytic capabilities that you are using today at a more affordable price, right? So it basically allows you to do more analytics inside of Sumo at a much better sort of economics and scale, and bring much more data into Sumo and use Sumo for all your data needs rather than being used for only a selected data sources because of the price point. We're also releasing new dashboards beta. New dashboard provides tons of new features and capabilities. And this will be actually released in GA also pretty soon. And then we're also doing data streams. Data streams allows you to make it easy for you to set up the data that you bring into Sumo. So you can set field extraction rules, partitions, all the data pre-processing that you have to do in Sumo quickly using this data stream notion that we are introducing. This again is in database. And lastly, the one point I wanted to cover is MMA seamless switching, which is multi-account access. So if you have subtenants or different instances of Sumo, we have released certain APIs that allow, that basically allow you to seamlessly switch between the different accounts that the Sumo instances that you have set up. So you can, easily do your work within Sumo. Right. Moving on to the next slide, please. So now we've covered what we have delivered. I wanted to sort of give you a high level sense of what we are planning for the next few months and quarters. We divide the continuous. So the first one is around the continuous intelligence platform. So on that platform, we've divided it into a bunch of different buckets, the work we are doing. The first bucket of work is around economics, right? Data tiering and licensing in particular. So like I mentioned, we released infrequent data tier. We will release archive in GA. That's also will go out this quarter. We will also extend our credits-based licensing model to add more capabilities to make it even more powerful than it is today. We will also provide cost observability. Basically using data volume information, like you can have granular control over what data is being ingested into Sumo, where is it going, how much cost are you paying to query that data, so that you have full visibility into your costs of managing Sumo Logic. And then we will also do improved setup and search experience for data tiers, so that with the introduction of data tiers, it increases the complexity of searching and it increases the complexity of setup. So we have some initiatives going on that would help make it even more easier for users to navigate through different data tiers and access the data in a seamless manner. On the other areas for configuration and management side, we'll keep improving the multi-account access stuff. We will release more APIs will be released, and support for Terraform will also be provided soon for most of the stuff in Sumo. So it's a lot of the teams which are developing features. In addition to providing APIs, are also working on Terraform support for automated and declarative sort of configuration, so that you can automate those workflows. We'll also work on Cloud Collector SDK for us to sort of make it easier to collect data from cloud to cloud sources or SaaS to SaaS sources within Sumo. We're also working on FedRAMP certifications. We have past couple of sections of the FedRAMP overall process. We are in the JAB review phase, and then subsequently the goal is we will be FedRAMP ready so that our customers can leverage Sumo Logic using our FedRAMP sort of deployment. And then we'll also extend our system health check events to include other configurations and settings in Sumo to provide more visibility into the health of the Sumo Logic system. So that will be extended. On the search and analytics side, we will release dynamic parsing, which is auto parsing of JSON and key value based log messages, automatic parsing of those sources. So that will go out in GA. We're also doing improvements on the lookup table lookups, which basically allows you to enrich data, log data with some extra sources that you might have. And we will also do parser integration, which basically makes it easy for you to parse out your data sources within Sumo Logic. So those improvements are coming out. And then lastly, on the experience side, I already covered next generation of dashboards is coming out. The version 1 is coming out. There will be additional improvements made to that new generation of dashboards that will be released subsequently throughout the year. And then we are also improving the search experience to solve some of the pain points that users have today on the log analytics side. And also the single sign-on workflows will be worked on and improved this year. Can we move to the next slide? The second one we wanted to cover was the operational intelligence piece. So on the operational intelligence side, there are a bunch of different things that are being worked on. So first one is sort of extending what we did in the Kubernetes space, the Kubernetes solution that we launched during Illuminate. So there are a bunch of stuff that's being done here. The first one is basically supporting OpenShift cluster support, which is OpenShift is a technology a lot of enterprises use for their Kubernetes deployment. So we will provide support for that in Sumo as well. We will also build deeper integration with Kubernetes control plane components. So regardless, you're a managed service provider or you're running your own copy of Kubernetes, you will be able to see, get visibility into your Kubernetes deployment. And we will also extend basically integrations into different Kubernetes components like etcd, core DNS, service meshes, etc. Right? So that's planned. And then on the app monitoring side, what we will do, or on the metrics side, we are extending our metrics support to basically collect more application sources within our metrics. So right now, a lot of the metrics in Sumo is focused on infrastructure metrics, but with this, we will also focus on a lot of the application sources so that you have full visibility right from the infrastructure level to the application side. We will also allow customizable topology. So if you're not using Kubernetes or the defined topology that comes with some of these solutions, then you can customize the topology based on how your environment is configured. So you can quickly find out the issues and quickly find what's happening within your infrastructure and sort of fix those. And then a lot of alerting improvements are also coming up. There have been tons of different feature requests around alerting, and those will be solved both for logs and for the metrics solution. And then lastly, I would sort of like to highlight, we are sort of, going towards a model where you want to use Sumo Logic to monitor the reliability of your service. Like Sumo Logic should be your only tool to monitor the reliability of your service. And to do that effectively, we want to extend the support to SLI and SLO monitoring. So you know what your high level SLIs are, you can track them, and then you can get alerted on top of them and fix those issues and see how it impacted overall business, all within Sumo Logic itself. So that's an important sort of capability or aspiration that we have, that we want to build towards. And lastly, we are also extending our overall observability solution to include traces. So we are working on a tracing backend right now. It will work with open source or open telemetry data. So for traces, we've specifically chosen this approach of sort of open source tracing, because we know that the future is you don't want to be in a vendor lock-in sort of mode. You want to leverage tracing solutions that that are vendor agnostic, so that you have complete flexibility and control over how you want to do things in the future. This solution, the tracing solution, is already in a beta stage, so select customers have privy to that. If you guys are interested, then please reach out to your respective AEs and SEs and they can put you in touch with that. And in the basic solution, we are providing two main capabilities right now, which is transactional level troubleshooting, where you basically take a trace and identify where the issue was, basically troubleshooting using one trace ID, the sort of the standard thing that you do with tracing. And then we also providing service maps. So based on the trace data that you ingest in Sumo, we can create a map of your entire service and how things are connected within your system. And using that service map, you can identify and troubleshoot issues even faster. Right, and later on these two features are already in beta right now, and the other feature that we will work on that will come towards the later half of the year is ability to extract metrics or KPIs from your trace data. So you can get business level or application level metrics extracted from your trace data itself. Right. So that was the high level sort of operational intelligence roadmap. With that, we can move on to the next slide, and I will hand it off for Aaron to sort of take it up.
All right, thank you. So good afternoon, my name is Eric von Linden. So I head up the technical sales engineering team here as part of the Cloud SIEM offering at Sumo Logic. A few things we'll go through. For those of you who are not familiar with Cloud SIEM Enterprise, so this was actually the acquisition of JASK late last year. We have integrated the product into the Sumo data set, and so we'll talk a little bit about some of the features that are being worked on today, and then also some of the things that we are working on in the very near future. So sort of starting from left to right, a lot around the platform integration. Happy to say that as of last Friday, all data that comes into Cloud SIEM Enterprise is actually going through the core platform ingestion. So it means single ingestion, and now all we're doing with the data is we run it through basically a data processing subroutine to be able to run the correlation aspect. So that first bullet there, unified ingestion, that is has completed as of last week. Unified single sign-on logins, that's actually rolling out here actually today. As well as working towards the security and compliance model that aligns with the core infrastructure. So for any of you who are familiar with the Sumo core platform, security is no joke, right? Between PCI, HIPAA, the SOC attestations, all the way down to FedRAMP, it is something that is very impressive, and is something that is being worked on from the aspect of the Cloud SIEM Enterprise piece, aligning the security controls in place. If that's something that you're interested in discussing as part of an opportunity, right, we do have a roadmap that we can discuss as part of that. The next step will also be opening this up to additional regions. So today, it runs in the US, Canada, and Germany. There are obviously additional regions that we are looking to spin up based on not only customer demand, but also to align with existing Sumo infrastructure. So Asia Pac and Europe as well. So that's something that is slated towards the end of this year. And again, it's a little bit dependent in terms of where some of the customer demand is. In terms of security investments, detection, so a lot of work has been done over the last few months around updating the rules engine, also how we manage the data, but also do rule prototyping. So obviously, when you look at stateful and threshold rule support, adding multiple use cases, chaining, some of the things that you would expect to see within a SIEM environment, but also the ability to be able to write a rule and say, hey, looking forward without creating all this, how noisy is this rule going to be, right? So I don't have to impact my production while I'm modeling out some of my rules. I can get some real-time experience out of it without actually disrupting anything within my system. Scheduled searches, so signals from the core platform into CSE, something that we're already doing. We see a lot of use cases around looking at deviation of traffic, as well as alerts that we may have generated as part of the core platform. Those can be fed into the Cloud SIEM Enterprise as signals, right? Those can be used as part of our rules, right? As part of our normal detection against different events within our environment. So again, working towards that integration of being able to use existing feature functionality with some of the new feature functionality that Cloud SIEM brings into it. a big focus on cloud content as well. So, a lot of work has already been done with AWS. Obviously, we are hosted in AWS. We're very familiar with AWS, so we have lots of rules that are already, out of the box, especially around account modification and just managing account membership, as well as a big push into GCP and Azure. We actually just had a customer that we did a lot of work on GCP. Actually have some very interesting use cases that came out of that are going to be rolling into our global content catalog. And as with anything else, right, we still manage the ability to have custom mappings and custom content. So if you have a unique system, something that maybe is in-house or something that maybe isn't mainstream, right? These are all things that certainly can be managed. One of the powerful things with Cloud SIEM Enterprise is you do from day one inherit all the content that is being used around the world as part of our global engine, but that localization allows you to be able to configure these based on your needs. So as we move over to the final box over here on the right, investigation management and response automation, record search, something that was again recently released, that ability to be able to live in one UI and be able to perform all of my searches, yet using the same feature functionality and speed that you would expect within Sumo Core. I don't have to pivot out of the UI. I can do everything from one spot. It allows me to be able to manage my day-to-day work from one spot, right? And so additional investigations, right? We're looking at some functionality, some additional functionality around some of, I'll call it a little bit of the orchestration, right? So we have case management functionality today where I can take notes, I can assign ownership, I can see history, right? We've had several requests in terms of, expanding upon that. As well as integrations into the likes of ServiceNow and Remedy and some of the other systems that exist, just allowing for us to be a little bit more flexible to be able to plug into existing user environments. And then finally, I think more of the advanced reporting, right? So, hey, what has my team been doing? Are we seeing more insights, more signals, month over month, week over week, right? Again, the power of the core platform is to be able to produce these types of reports and have them readily available at your fingertips. So whether it's something I want to pull daily, weekly, monthly, right? These are all things that the ability to be able to run the data into any spot allows me to be able to produce reports that are very powerful. I had a customer just the other day who said, hey, I spend 1 weekend a month. My Saturday morning is spent trying to pull my web proxy logs and being able to tell my my CISO, who went where and what sites do we commonly see, and then how do we go back and put those controls in place. We showed them the ability to not only be able to generate alerts on that so they can be dealt in real time, but also how to aggregate that and have it done in a way that he can actually provide that report weekly as well as monthly to his CISO. And the power of being able to provide that information to drive the business was very compelling to him. So a lot of interesting use cases that are traditional security and maybe not so much traditional security. It ends up being sort of the blend of both worlds, the best of both worlds. So Pete, I'm gonna kick this one back to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Eric. A lot of good stuff there from Angad and Eric. I mean, clearly speaking from my interaction with customers, a lot of focus and a lot of interest around the new dashboarding, the new Kubernetes functionality, and kind of extending that piece of our platform. The multi-account access APIs, as well as the newer alerting. These are for logs and metrics, are all key things that a lot of our customers up and down the East and definitely really across the world have been asking for. And to Eric's piece, the security focus right now has really been cranking at Sumo Logic. A lot of interest there around a number of different use cases between not only SOC and things like that and the automation of that piece, but true SIEM capabilities as well. So definitely good stuff. If there are any questions, please send those things into the Q&A, and we can absolutely get those questions answered for you. So we're going to switch gears now, and we're going to head into our customer-facing portion of the user group. And with us, we have Milind Bhargava, who's the founder of Mjolnir Security. Milind is an experienced cybersecurity expert of over 11 years out of Toronto. Has worked in multiple industries, the telecommunication space, consulting, finance, with and around law enforcement, which really has provided him a unique insight into the different threats that the diverse, all of our different verticals and industries that we support today really are facing. So, he founded Mjolnir Security. I love the name, by the way, Milind. I'm a huge Avengers and Thor fan, so I love it. Mjolnir Security, for those of you who aren't aware, that is Thor's hammer, the name of Thor's hammer. He founded that organization in 2017 to help prevent data breaches and really help proactively identify threats for a lot of the Canadian companies that have been impacted, both in a reactive stance and even more importantly in a proactive stance. So let me turn it over to Milind to get into his content. Milind, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, welcome aboard. Take it away.
Thank you. And if anybody's interested, I can send out a few Mjolnir hammers afterwards.
I'll definitely take one.
So thanks for the introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Milind Bhargava. I'm the founder of Mjolnir Security. And can we go to the next slide, please? So today, the plan is to talk about what Mjolnir is, what we do specifically, our infrastructure, why we chose Sumo Logic as compared to all the competitors out there, and how we're using it, especially with our clients. So to talk about Mjolnir, again, next slide, please. So we have 4 core services, and our aim is to offer a holistic security solution to all of our clients in such a way that even before a threat can happen or something can become a threat to a particular client, we'll have mitigated it. So as part of that, we have SOC as a service, which is at this point completely running off Sumo Logic. We have digital forensics and incident response, which if you're involved within your organization, generally it's very hard to do with, say, log aggregator based tools and so on. We have actually found a way with some of our own tool set. By integrating Sumo Logic, we were able to do incident response and forensics for an organization with 4,000 something users in less than 2 days. What would have otherwise taken by hand by other tools that we have at our disposal at least a few weeks. So we have greatly saved a lot of time for ourselves for doing the work and then ended up passing on those savings to our clients. And then our flagship product, the Mjolnir Threat Intel, which is basically the darknet threat intel service, but with a twist. And with that one, we have basically put all of our visualizations and presentations, or even when we go and speak about in other security conferences like DEF CON, Sector, and so on, we specifically use Sumo Logic to showcase all of our data in our systems, and people love it. And it makes our life easier as well to show real-time data as we are picking up from darknet marketplaces, forums, or people typing nasty stuff and actually displaying it to people. Next slide, please. Our infrastructure is actually a mix of a lot of things we have got across various data centers in the world with our clients being spread around and using AWS and Azure. Initially, we started with a single model of just using data centers. And then once we got introduced to Sumo Logic, we realized we can actually get data from all the locations real time and actually correlate. And to talk more about correlate, there's a few slides that cover that specifically later. Can you go to the next slide? So the biggest question that we are asked is why Sumo Logic, or why not any of the other competitors that we had earlier? So our biggest point, or the biggest point of pleasure with Sumo Logic is we don't have to worry about infrastructure. Our own infrastructure that we had to set up with hardware, with licenses, with hiring people specifically to make sure our instances are running, minus the effort it takes to actually monitor the client interface and do all of that stuff. Now we can ingest large volumes of data without actually having to worry about if it's structured or unstructured, especially if we can convert everything to JSON, life becomes really easy. And even if it's not convertible, we can still use log reduce and save a lot of effort on that. We no longer have to hire people to maintain the infrastructure. We just have to hire people to use Sumo Logic, which is actually quite easy to use. And prior to using Sumo Logic, we had a big database, especially for the Tor Intelligence product, where we had about 8 petabytes of data. And in that database, we used to search things using grep. until one day we started using Sumo Logic and we made an index of everything and fed it into Sumo. So now we can use Sumo and it takes maybe 10 or 15 seconds to find any keyword based on whatever file we are looking for, just because it's just so easy for us to do it. And the data visualization. The live dashboards are a big boon for every client we work with. We give them a live dashboard to see everything that we are seeing, and it just makes them happy that they can see what we're up to instead of having a wait time while they wait for a report to come by. Next slide, please. So I talked about incident response in digital forensics, and we are able to do all of those activities simply by using the Windows app. Now you must be wondering, how does the Windows app actually help with incident response and digital forensics? A lot of scripts or a lot of queries that the Windows app uses as part of the app made by Sumo Logic are actually useful when we are doing incident response or digital forensic investigations. So by reusing and customizing all of the scripts that are present or all of the queries that are present within the Windows app, we were able to make our own solutions that can help us automate all of the services that you see: the SOC service, the threat intel, the incident response, and the digital forensics. Just by having 9 people, we can, across all of our customers, easily do all of the incident response and so on activities in complete automation. Like even for a SOC, typically for a big company, you need 10 to 15 people. With automation and Sumo Logic, we have brought it down to 3. That's big savings for us, and that's big savings for the customers. Next slide, please. In one of our incidents, we got called upon after one of our clients told us that there was a password stealing malware that was found on one of their domain controllers, and we were engaged to support the incident containment and investigation. So the first thing we did was deploy Sumo Logic across all of the devices, servers, laptops, endpoints, and even in places where the direct agent could not be deployed, we set up a remote collector so we can get all the logs and so on. We're able to find out, after going through all of the logs from their firewalls, endpoints, and so forth, that if we required, we can actually set up something like a chronological list of all the activities that happen on across that entire environment. Now imagine this: if you have to look at a few thousand computers and go through each individual logs, it will take you almost forever to go through all the logs. But what if you could actually take all of those logs and, using Sumo, set them up in a chronological order so you know who clicked on what, and then what happened on a particular computer, and then something else happened on a next computer, and then a network connection was open to transfer a particular file and so on. All of this was at the same time connected to the Tor intelligence product that we have that is also using Sumo Logic for the backend. And by correlating all of this data, we were able to map out every single bad thing that happened with the client from the time the malware came in, the malware was clicked on, then the attackers came in and they worked around the network, all the things they stole, and when that data actually ended up being sold on the dark web. All in all, just excellent automation using Sumo Logic. So that was it for my talking. Any questions?
Any questions for Milind from the audience, folks? We definitely heard a lot of things there, Milind, and thank you very much for presenting while I'm giving some of the folks online the chance to kind of type in some questions here. But we definitely heard a lot, I think, around proactive notifications as well as reactive, right? But everybody's trying to get proactive. Scalability and flexibility, automating key kind of processes in the incident response and the security landscape, and then reducing manual effort significantly. I mean, all things that kind of speak, you know, obviously to Mjolnir, that's it's unique there, but leveraging Sumo to kind of help assist with doing a lot of those things. Any questions? We'll give another few seconds or so to see if anything pops up, Milind, and then you know, if you wouldn't mind, you know, sometimes it just takes a few minutes or so for some of these questions to pop up. You might be able to answer some of these on the Q&A portion.
Sure.
Okay, why don't we move on? Thank you very much, Milind. Really appreciate it. And like I said, I mean, keep your eye on the Q&A portion. Usually some of those questions roll in a little bit after the presentations end. So we definitely thank you again. Really good stuff, and we appreciate you joining the user group community and sharing. Moving on to our next customer example, we have Helen Ashton, who's joining us from Canadian Tire. She's a leader in the enterprise application monitoring space there for Canadian Tire. And they've been a Sumo customer for, I believe, Helen, I know you will keep me honest always, but for over 3 years now, around a number of different use cases and certainly locations.
That's right.
Helen, yes, and you know, I will say this about you, Helen. You've been a great Sumo partner. I believe you're on our CAB as well. And in addition, a little known fact that I was made aware of that I know you're going to share in a second to everybody. So I will steal your thunder here because it kind of goes back to my Boston roots that you can appreciate as well. But Helen actually has a PhD in physics, everyone. So as we say in Boston, she is wicked smart, and we want to be listening and paying attention here for this session. So Helen, why don't you take it away and let's listen to your use case.
Well, I'm not quite sure how to follow up with that fantastic introduction. Thanks, Pete. Can you move on to the first slide for me? So, okay, so Pete led on that I have a PhD in physics. I guess what I was going to tell you about myself was my career path has gone through physics, software development, education, technology, research and development, and now application monitoring. Might seem a little varied to a lot of people, but to me, it's all about two things: data manipulation and how you can help people do things more effectively or more efficiently with that data. So there's a perfectly logical pattern to it behind the scenes. Who am I? Pete's already said I'm the lead of the enterprise application monitoring at Canadian Tire. More about them in a moment. But who I am is someone that says, how can I help? How can we use the data that we have to empower our users to provide better services, more reliable services to their customers? I particularly love automating out the mundane. I don't think anyone likes doing boring things repeatedly, so we do quite a lot of that. And I love sharing things. Throughout my career, I've been a mentor, I've been a professor, I've been an educator in so many different ways, and I think that's incredibly valuable to me and to my team. So I love seeing, as my quote there, this was something that came from the CAB, I love seeing what a difference using data can make when we have sophisticated searching and data manipulation that lets us see into our data and find things that teams didn't think was possible. And this is what Sumo Logic gives us. Next slide, thanks, Pete. Okay, so who are Canadian Tire? There are a lot of different companies underneath Canadian Tire. Canadian Tire was founded in 1922, and there's over 1,700 retail and gas outlets and tens of thousands of employees. And every single one of these banners you see here, they have their own culture and their own processes, and we work across almost all of these, including the banking sector, which adds its own extra security and data protection issues. So what I want to tell you a little bit about is our journey that started 3 years ago with Sumo Logic. So if we can look at the next slide. So I wanted to just give you an idea first of what are the things that we decided were really important at the beginning of our journey, and how did we achieve some of these, and then give you some use cases. So when I first joined the company, there were a number of different application monitoring solutions, and they were all individually stood up by the teams, the software development teams or the application support teams that wanted them. They set them up, they negotiated costs, they maintained them, they ran them. Not massively efficient. So we wanted to get rid of that. We wanted to, first of all, rationalize the support that was there. These application teams had the burden, sometimes in a very small team, maybe 3 or 4 people, of supporting an application monitoring system too. And every team we spoke to before we started implementing this said, yeah, we've kind of seen this before. There'll be no support from anyone. We'll have to run everything. And, you know, we're kind of not in. And so what we really wanted to do was tell them about the fact that we wanted to build a center of excellence where they were supported, where they get to be the experts in their own application, and we get to be an expert in the monitoring and support them in their journey there. Most people don't need to be no more than about 10% of any monitoring tool that they use. That's the stuff they use all the time. And for the rest of it, we're here. We also want to take advantage and rationalize costs and take advantage of economies of scale. We'll get cheaper unit costs. We have the ability, if we put everyone together, to ebb and flow with the volume, depending on where different busy times of the year are. And we get to focus on operational efficiencies that everyone can take advantage of. A bit more on those in a minute. We wanted to get a cross-application view of our data. Now, people weren't really with us on this at the beginning because they were still in their own little teams supporting their own little things. But I knew it was going to be important. We needed to get the data in single system so that when something's going wrong, when you're getting issues and they're pointed at your team, let's start off by knowing if it's your problem or if it's someone else's. Now, not to point the finger, but there's a lot of wasted time assuming that it's an issue in your system when actually it's not. So how can we detect and direct really quickly? Well, we do that because we have cross-application data views. And we also understand the impact on the full customer experience if we do that. Very few systems are as isolated as the support teams can sometimes be. We wanted to share good practice. At the moment, my team works with over 40 different application teams, and we understand the journey that we call them our customers, the application teams. We understand the journey that they go through. We can help them get past those initial stages of, we don't know what to do, we don't know how to do this. We can also make very good guesses at what kind of things are going to be useful to them because we have quite a few teams that we support. We can pull out experiences and examples from other teams, share them very quickly and apply them to their data very quickly too. We're also very experienced in helping deal with incident resolution, either at the time of the incident or afterwards. We get used to asking the right questions and knowing what can be done to follow up. And what we decided to do when we did this journey is, you saw I showed a whole load of different banners underneath. There was no way we were going to cover everybody. And there was a conscious decision not to try and do that. We didn't want 10% for everybody. We wanted 80, 90% for a small number of people because that's where we thought we'd get the value. So we focused on all our customer-facing systems so that we could improve the experience our customers were having and understand where the issues were, not driven by how our server's doing, but driven by the impact on our customers, and use that data to drive decisions, to understand the scale of the opportunities that were there, and to understand the impact of any changes that we made. So that was our mantra, our set of requirements. And what backbone did we put in place to deal with that? Next slide, Pete. So we had to set up a scalable structure. I have a really small team. If I count people full-time, I don't think I get to 3. So I have a very small team. So we have to automate things really quickly from the beginning. We have to automate our installs, our configuration, our team access, the processes that we have to go through in the company, the communications with any other systems. That's a given to us. It was one of the things we spent a lot of time looking at the beginning. How easy would it be to do that? We also had to make sure that the common functionality, you know, that 10% I said that everybody pretty much needs all the time, that was really easy, because a small team can't be the person that does the work for everybody. We have to be the enablers for that 10% that they need all the time. Sumo Logic's searching functionality, the stuff that you do all the time, is really easy for people to learn. We can teach them in under an hour and they pick it up really quickly. And the third thing that enabled scalability was the metadata, being able to define the right metadata against our data. We use most of that through our source category definitions, and we have a very strict definition of that so that we can help people get to the data they want to search, so that they can know what they're searching and what they're finding out, and so that we can understand what volume they're using too, because unfortunately cost is always a factor in there, and we can help them manage that and make smart decisions. The metadata, you see I have this in a couple of places, the metadata was also important in terms of our visibility. Access controls over data was important because some of our data is sensitive. Sometimes it's very, very sensitive and we don't even ingest it in its raw form, but most of the time it's a case of, you know, we just want these people are approved, they understand this data and they understand what to do with it. So we made a lot of use of AD groups and the RBAC controls inside Sumo Logic, and that was critical. Without that, we couldn't have moved forward. We also used our access controls to set up folders for our different teams to put their content in, and to set up a structure so that they can control how they approve and move content forward from that draft play stage to something that you can have confidence in that it's going to give you what it says it does. And then our support, as I said before, support wasn't really a thing that had happened before. So we wanted to make it really clear right from the beginning we were on a journey with our users. We were there from the start, as much as they needed us for as long as they needed us, with the caveat that there's 3 of us. We wanted to understand their needs, their capacity for learning this and for taking things on themselves, and the resources they had for that. We wanted to know what they were ready for and take them through that journey at the pace they were ready. So we set up SMEs in every application team. We pick 1 or 2 individuals, and those are the people we work with. Individuals in my team work with them, and we build up that relationship. Even if they think they don't have something they need us for, we're talking to them. We're talking to them and understanding what are the current things that are important in their world. What are the recent incidents they've had? What are the kinds of data, or what are the functionalities that are coming in that we can help look at baselining for? We're part of their solution, and we want them to know that we're on that journey. We're not just here to say, here's a search or an alert, I won't go and do it. We want to understand. And we make sure we're a part of incident reviews as well. We learn an awful lot, not just about the teams we support, but about other teams that need our help when we're involved in those reviews. So we built up a relationship with our incident management team. Next slide, please. So I'm going to go into a few use cases here, just to share the kind of things that we play with here, that we use in Canadian Tire. So the first one there, everyone starts, where are our errors? Right? It's an idea of working at how our system is performing. So we look at where the errors are in terms of time. You can see there's a time chart there, but also how they're distributed. And even just some really basic top level statistics on your metadata or on your different sections of your application can help you understand abnormal behavior. We also show people the specific details of those alerts, and we let them filter out so that most people who are using these don't have to know how to write a search. They just have to know how to pick the different things they're interested in. On the top right, we're understanding a resolving instance. So we look at data that helps people understand incidents. This very specific case was an unknown issue that people felt was causing an issue with customer email systems when they were ordering from us. And it was just a belief. They didn't really have any evidence. So I think it took about half an hour for us to work out what the particular types of events involved were and build out a statistical dashboard, of which this is a section of it. And it showed them very clearly that they had a very good, for about 95% of people, which is what that pie chart shows, a very good underlying success rate. That pie chart divides into slow, which is unacceptable, acceptable, and fast. And those green ones are all fast. So in the main, it was great. And that was important for them to understand it wasn't impacting all of their customers, but there were customers that were having big problems. And this helped them justify the effort they were going to put into resolving this issue. And we also support processes. So this is a section of a dashboard that looks at, and this is one of our common use cases with our teams. It looks at different regular jobs and how they're performing, divided up into critical and non-critical. That 7 there tells me there's 7 critical jobs that haven't run when they should have done, and it lists them. So straight away, we can alert on that. We can have people come and fix these, or even better, we can trigger a job that fixes them themselves. And the time chart there was an example that we used as evidence for a team as to how long an issue had been going on for. They didn't realize it. 2 weeks that their jobs weren't running. This was a really strong part of the case for these guys to get on board and start to think about what was important and what we needed to watch. So this was on our user-facing applications, and that was where we started. Then, next slide, then we looked into widening our scope. That's kind of day 1, day 6 months. Now we're getting teams who are starting to really think about what they actually want to know. So I'm going to start with the two charts on the right-hand side there. These are looking at key functionality and KPI measures. People were mentioning this earlier. This is something we started about 3 years ago, very soon after our journey. And we got all our application teams to help us define with them what their key functionalities were, how we tested them, how we made sure they were working, and how we measured how busy they were and how well they were working. And these charts are showing you the trends across a number of different key functionality and KPIs. Now, a lot of our stuff, like a lot of people, is cyclical across a day, across a week. So getting hard limits for those to alert on can be difficult, but understanding what they look like is the first step in that journey. And we do a lot of measures on reporting statuses of systems based on these metrics. And these didn't exist before we started doing monitoring, not at a high level. We also have lots of teams now starting to talk about customer experiences and customer journeys. And the chart I'm showing you there is actually looking at our in-store functionality from our staff trying to fulfill orders from some of our customers. And we were trying to understand whether their experiences, the few that you get reported from 500 plus stores, were they representative? Were the issues with the specific store? Were the issues with processes in the store? Or were the issues with the functionality behind the scenes? So starting to understand what parts of that journey are important and how we measure those and how we look at the experience. And this is our customers in the street and our customers in the stores too, in terms of the people that work for us. So understanding those and prioritizing the work we do based on these customer experiences and where those bottlenecks are is really important. And final slide, I just wanted to share with you a couple of the more surprising use cases, or maybe just we didn't expect them at the beginning. We do a lot of dashboarding on audit data. The one I'm showing is actually from my team. This is us auditing who are doing installs and configurations on our Sumo Logic agents and where they're being done with what configurations. Now, this is important from an access permissions audit standpoint, which is where it came from, but it also tells us a lot about how our teams are working, who's using what, where are they going with it. So we have a number of different audit dashboards, and that seems to be a more common request to us now. Sometimes that data is from Rundex, quite a lot of it. Sometimes it's from some of our developer tools like Git and things like that. And the final one, which is my favorite, is the real-time retail data. This came out of a push for Cyber Week, particularly for real-time data, instead of waiting 3 or 4 hours for a report. And we set these things up very quickly for the teams. And we're actually just looking at order place statistics there in terms of retail data, which is a great driver behind promotions and things like that. But the one I like looking at tells me what people are buying. So if I can just share with you over the last few months, 3 key items in this order that were popular and what that says about the fantastic society we live in. First item everyone was buying, trampolines. Second one was dumbbells. So we dealt with our kids, now we need to deal with ourselves. And finally, the weather got better and leaf bags were all the rage. And it always gives me a giggle every week going and having a look. And that's everything I wanted to share with you. I hope you find something interesting in there in terms of how you might approach what you're doing or what kind of use cases you might use. Thanks, everyone.
Helen, thank you so much. I mean, that was awesome. I mean, that's what I was talking about when I said you were wicked smart. That was great. I mean, I loved everything that you shared, not only from the journey when you started 3 plus years ago about what you were looking to accomplish, right? And then, how you leverage Sumo to accomplish some of those critical requirements for you, right? Or especially around scalability, data visibility, and then how you're ultimately supporting your own internal customers, right? Which are different folks, throughout the Canadian Tire brand of businesses. And definitely thank you very much. I love the last part as well, especially around your internal use cases, like tracking the KPIs you mentioned, your audit dashboarding, and your real-time data dashboard data. That is a huge use case here, especially in the retail community that we see, as well as also businesses that just have mission critical key applications or functions, et cetera, that you need instant, nearly instant visibility into, right? And those are that is a great example of putting that into to play in real life. Thank you very much, Helen. Really, really appreciate it.
You're welcome, Pete.
Okay. And I'm going to order, just so you see, I've already got my trampoline on order. Okay, so then moving on for our last, but certainly not least, customer review session today. We're going to have Jacob Verret, who's the VP of Information Security, DevOps, and Cloud Operations. It's a mouthful because he's a very busy guy at Workjam, based out of Montreal. And in addition to being that busy guy, as you can tell from the title, right? Jacob manages the corporate information security, all compliance requirements and audits, infrastructure security, and a lot more, currently for Workjam, right? Like all of us today, a lot of different hats. So he's been a customer and a user of Sumo for, roughly around 2 years or so, and has really been a great partner of ours in exploring all that Sumo has to offer, and trying to find out new ways and clearly pushing the limits on new ways on how to utilize it. So Jacob, welcome, and take it away.
Thank you so much. Okay, can you go to the first slide, please? Okay, so I'm Jacob, guys. Thank you so much for hearing me out today. So Workjam is a digital workplace platform, enterprise as a service platform. So our main customer are non-desk workers. So basically every companies around the world that will have like hourly workers working in the stores, franchisees, a company as well, and so on. So just to name a few customers we have on our list, and we're really proud to have those customers as well. We have Apple, so all the Apple store in the world, all the Mac Genius uses our application for communication and scheduling. We have Verizon in the US, Shell Corporation around the world, Woolworth Groceries in Australia, and TJX now Europe, US, and Canada as well. So those are the customers we have right now. Can you go to the other slide, please? And we offer typically like shift management, schedule workflow, task management, messaging, training, a broad range of stuff directly directed at the end user themselves, right? So the people on the field that typically will not have any way to communicate with the with upper management or even with the store to get more information. So during those crazy days with COVID, we've been deploying in 5 days for some of those customers, potential customer. We have a package pretty much free for anyone who wants to onboard. And we've been able to give them ways to communicate in the stores with this pandemic, right? To people who would normally have no ways to get in touch with their employer. Next slide, please. So at Workjam, a quick infrastructure overview. So we are 100% cloud-based. Nothing is hosted on-premise. When I mean nothing, it's nothing. Since the beginning of this pandemic, we've been fully remote. The office is now, I would say, I don't like to say it, but kind of useless. We're all being able to work from home because everything is in the cloud. Everything we host is in the cloud. Everything we use as corporate product, like Office and so on, is on the cloud too. So cloud first, the company, cloud native, sorry. As of today, we have around 10 deployments across the world. So meaning 10 data centers. And because we are an enterprise software, a lot of our customers, they require a pre-prod, I would say a UAT environment to test new features before it gets deployed in their production environment. So this is why for each region there, you would see at least 2 data centers because we always have to have a UAT in the production. So we have 10 deployments that are client facing, that have to be up all the time, if I may. And behind that, all the environments that are used by us internally for QA, for staging, for development, and so on. We have another 15 of them running in both GCP and Amazon. And we have a mix of Kubernetes on GCP and ECS on Amazon, with actually ECS being deprecated in the next few weeks to leverage actually EKS as well in Amazon. We also use a few other tools, to help us in that hosting environment, like they are listed below. They're more like Threat Stack, Signal Science for WAF, Cloud and QP, and so on. But that's basically an overview of our infrastructure. Next slide, please. So at Workjam, basically, it's a tool that it's not only used by the development teams, it's used, I would say, across all the organizations. So from sales to development to tactical to us, cloud operation and the security, support, release and QA. Even since the inception, since we chose Sumo Logic, or management team, so meaning director, VPs, and executives, they all have access. They have their dashboard set up. They can follow in real time, what's the status of environments, what is the throughput we're having, are we seeing any degradation of service, and so on. So it's really a tool used across all the organization for us. Next slide. So basically, what do we do with Sumo as of now? So as well, because we are a development company, we provide enterprise services. All the developers will use it to debug, right? In real time, they have access to their log and they can investigate anything. With that tool, Sumo Logic, since we're using it, we've been able to accomplish a lot of our compliance requirement actually, because it captures the logs. We are able to schedule searches, provide real-time alert in integrations such as Slack, email, and so on. We are SOC 2 type 2 compliant, so we need to make sure that our logs that are ingested are secure and so on. So that's why it has been really useful in terms of maintaining our compliance and push even further some controls we have. We are able to provide real-time dashboard to all the team, like I said, internally, from top down, management to developers. We've now discovered too, since about a year ago, that we can expose some dashboards to externally. So we've been leveraging that with some of our customers. So we've developed some dashboards for them, and because they are behind like VPN and so on, we're able to only whitelist their IP and provide them access to the dashboard instead of the whole Sumo Logic. And they're really happy because these dashboards are in real time and they can see the actual throughput of Workjam processing large file they're sending us. So instead of us developing dashboard in the application, we were able to leverage that in I would say a matter of 2-3 days and provide immediate value to our customers. Other than that, we do some security control with it. With the Sumo Logic apps are really, really useful. All the integration there. And since about a month ago, we deployed a CD tool called Harness. And Harness is a tool that is able to integrate with different, infrastructure tools such as New Relic, Sumo Logic, and so on. So that tool will ingest the logs that are in Sumo, will ingest the logs in New Relic, and so on. And following a deployment of our application, it would basically say if the deployment looks good or not based on AI. So everything we provide to Sumo is then fed there, and we have a complete loop about how that deployment is not going well because the logs 20 minutes ago were showing like 200 all across the board, and now we're seeing like 400 and 500 errors there. So the release, the deployment doesn't look good from a logs perspective. So it's really driving our continuous deployment efforts. So really we get value here. Next slide. So as of now at Workjam, we have around 150 active users out of 250 employees. Not all of them uses this, but much of them, like I said, in every department. We ingest around 300 gigabytes per day in continuous and frequent bucket partitions. For us, the frequent bucket that was presented a bit earlier in the the roadmap and the infrequent initiative, it's really a lifesaver for us because I would say during a deployment day, we would generate a ton of logs that are not necessarily really useful, right? So now with that frequent, we are able to parse those and send them in that bucket and save our continuous, ingest capacity without busting it, if I may. So that was really a lifesaver there. We have around 200 live dashboards and real-time alerts set it up. We do around 600 log search a day divided across the organization. Around 80% of research are for like less than 24 hours, right? We will always search for the last 24 hours or less, 15 to 20 minutes like this. And 93% of our searches are returned in less than 10 seconds. So we get results in less than 10 seconds for 93% of what we search actually, which is pretty awesome. Next slide, please. We also use it for, like I mentioned a bit earlier. So we have Sumo Logic ingesting logs from GCP and AWS, but most of it GCP for now. And so with that in mind, GCP and Stackdriver and everything they offer, even though they have like great set of tools, they were not offering us what was needed for us at Workjam to provide like real-time alerting in a sense that I want to know what's happening in my environment, right? So all of the logs that are generated by GCP are pushed to Sumo Logic, ingested there, and then we have real-time alerts, schedule search, defined, and that would provide us direct alerts in Slack. So I'm just showing an example here of one of our operators who went into the production account in GCP and did an activity, and in less than 1 minute, we have a Slack message saying that that user have made that change in that production environment. And it's all possible because of Sumo. Now, GCP has released a new module, which is called Security Command Center, which also generates some logs related to potential threat in the environment. So now we're also getting that directly in Slack channel, which is basically the tool we use on every day to follow what's happening in the organization. So again, we're seeing like real-time results being pushed, thankful to Sumo. We have more than 3 months of retention there. So whenever we have to audit and go back in the days, we can go back and see the results. It's easier than having to look in GCP because it's just focused on what we want to do there because the rules have been defined in Sumo Logic actually. Next slide. So we chose, like Pete mentioned earlier, we've been with Sumo for at least 2 years. And it was a long process because before that we were on log entries on a basic plan and so on. And we started to grow like crazy. We went from 1 data center to 11, to 10, like I showed you. So we kind of went back and forth between Splunk and Sumo and so on. And at the end, we chose Sumo for their excellence and for the actual reason I'm listing there. Like the pricing model for us was just awesome in a sense that I remember Splunk was like, if you go above your daily ingest 3 times in a month, you will have to go to the next bucket. So we were like, okay, that's not good because we really have to control what we're ingesting. And from day one, when we were with Sumo and they were saying, no, for us, it's like the average monthly. So if you go above 5-10 days in a row, but at the end of the month, the monthly is not above the daily. The daily average is not over the daily you pay for, you're all good. It's like, wow, this is what we need, right? Because we need some days where we can go over. The time to value was just faster, easier. So I would say from the day we signed and from the day we got value out of it was like 15 days. It was already in production and ingesting some logs. Sumo Logic app catalog for us is just good out of the box value. Our developers and basically operators, they really like the log compare and log reduce function. They find it really useful. The very flexible query language. So when you want to query the logs and data transformation and so on is just good. And the last point I would say it's stable. So far I think we've seen 2 or 3 blips, but it's really, really stable. And everyone loves, working with Sumo since we started 2 years ago. So I think that was my my last slide. Yep. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Jacob. Really, really appreciate it. And while we wait for, some potential questions to be formulated, a couple things I heard there, right? First off, you're doing some great business. You got some huge customers, and those huge customers, as we all know here, they require some premium support, right? You have to be able to put those customers the right way. Loved, what you mentioned, but we're very similar here at Sumo. And I think that most of the folks online right now are kind of going through the same thing with the COVID pandemic. And, not every organization is as equipped as potentially Workjam to move totally in. It's probably, I would bet that there's going to be a couple of folks, if this thing keeps going on, where they're like, you know what, I don't really want to go back to the office. So pretty cool story about that. I love how you're using a multi-cloud platform, GCP and AWS, Kubernetes across both, and how many different use cases that you're leveraging. Holy cow, the developers are using it. You're leveraging it to achieve your compliance requirements around your log sources. You're doing information security for GCP and AWS just with our out-of-the-box applications. The integration with Harness sounded like it was pretty easy. That is such a cool use case about being able to ingest those logs, run the Harness tool, and then be able to understand fairly immediately if that deployment is good, all based on artificial intelligence. I thought that was a really, really cool use case. Thanks for sharing that.
Pleasure.
Yeah, and then the overall usage of it, right? And when you're shifting to value, the credit, and this is something for really everybody on the line right now. If you're not familiar with it, I highly advise you connect with your account teams to really discuss about the different licensing models that we have now around the data tiering. And Jacob mentioned on his section the frequent analytics tier, as well as the continuous. If you're not familiar with that, Sumo Logic has varying data tiers for different types of data that are of different types of value and might have different types of use cases. And as such, they probably should be at a different price point, right? And those are all things that, Jacob mentioned, the potential of going over and having an on-demand bill, that's really a legacy way of thinking, right? And we're really trying to do away with that. And it sounded like you're leveraging those different data tiers, Jacob, to avoid that. And then, I loved how you wrapped it up as well with really some key value points specific around Sumo, the time to value being specific to SaaS and being able to get going immediately. The app catalog comes out of the box, as well as how easy it is to kind of leverage and create new content on the fly. And then, again, touching on the costs and tiering. So thank you very much, Jacob. Really, really appreciate it. Any questions, folks, for Jacob? Please send that in to the Q&A portion, and we'll get those answered for you. Jacob, on behalf of Sumo, thank you very much for coming on and sharing with that. I love it.
Pleasure.
Okay. And so wrapping up here, certainly, showing up last as a presenter, but certainly not least, right? As we mentioned before, right? One of the things that is a core tenet of Sumo is being in it with our customers. And that also really is reflected in terms of the, giving back to the local communities that we're involved with. And we really like to highlight the great work by the nonprofit organizations in those, respective communities. So today, again, kind of rounding off our speaking circuit, we're going to have Lori Nikkel, the CEO from Second Harvest. They are a Toronto-based organization impacting food rescue and providing food and meals to millions of Canadians, right? And that's, when I was kind of researching the organization, an absolutely wonderful cause. And I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about it, Lori. So without further ado, please, can you hear me, Lori? Are you out there? I think you might be on mute, Lori.
Oh, I am so on mute. Oh my goodness.
No problem. Hey, it happens to me all the time. I'm in sales. So why don't you, the floor is yours.
Yeah, perfect. And I promise not to keep you very long. So for those of you who have not heard of Second Harvest, we are Canada's largest food recovery organization. And our vision is no waste and no hunger, which basically means we're an environmental organization with a hunger relief outcome. There is more than enough food in Canada and in the world to feed everybody. So we have a food systems problem. That's what Second Harvest is working on. So we capture surplus food from right across the supply chain, from farmers, manufacturers, processors, anywhere that there is food. And we support anywhere where there's an agency or a charity or a nonprofit using food. And what's interesting about that is that we've done research, and there are actually over 60,000 organizations across Canada that use food in their program. So we know there's a ton of food. Now we know there's a ton of need, and this is how we know there's a ton of food. We take research very seriously, and so we did the research. How much food is lost and wasted across Canada? Turns out it's 58%. So we actually waste more food in our country than we consume, and that includes imports. Next slide, please. While at the same time, we produce enough food to feed 52 million people. There's only 37 million people. That means there's 15 million people that could be accessing this surplus food. Like there's 4 million of us are food insecure. There's no reason for that at all. I think the next slide, but I think you just have to hit it a couple times because it'll come up with some numbers. I love my comms team. And the next slide. So how do we manage the surplus food? Well, in Ontario, we do this with a whole lot of trucks. We have a big logistics system in place. We have a distribution center in North York. We've had to actually open a secondary distribution center in Etobicoke because of the amount of excess food that is in our system right now as a result of COVID, in addition to the food that's always there. So you may have seen our trucks on the road. They are out delivering food in the GTA to shelters and senior centers and schools when they were open and food banks. And it's all perishable. Well, 90% of what we do is perishable. And we focus on protein, produce, and dairy. And we do that because that is the hardest food to access if you're low income. And it's also the worst for our environment. So we're really trying to keep this good food out of landfill because it creates methane gas, which is a huge contributor to climate change. So we do that in Ontario through our distribution centers and our trucks. And then next slide, across Canada, next slide, across Canada with our online system, foodrescue.ca. Sorry, it was the previous slide. And that is a real matchmaker. It's a connector to a local organization directly with a local food business. So if I'm a Starbucks, who's a national partner, it doesn't make sense for Second Harvest to send a truck to them. It makes sense for that Starbucks to connect directly with the shelter in its neighborhood. And we've had to scale that because of COVID right across Canada, and we did that in about 3 weeks. So right now you can access food anywhere in Canada through this portal, and you can access funding and grocery gift cards as well. But that's just one of our programs. We have many other programs because we are about systems change. So we have our trucks, we have our food rescue, we believe strongly in training and education, certification of people so they can do things safely. We know that the food is often not enough, so we have harvest kitchens where we produce meals that people that don't have kitchens can access. And we also believe strongly in supporting the children and youth of Canada, and we have a Feeding Our Future program that provides meals to children and youth during the summer when they're not in school. Next slide. So I love your business because we love data too. Every decision we make is based on data, and we are unique as a charity in that we actually have an analytics department to make sure that the decisions that we're making are based on credible sources. So this is just a snapshot of the food that is that we rescued and redistributed in our fiscal year, but you'll notice the big increase in March and April. So that is atypical. That is a result of COVID. Next slide, please. And I will briefly touch on this. COVID has really changed our business in terms of the amount of surplus food that is in the system and the amount of people that are in need right across Canada. And so it's only through these different various ways of managing the surplus food that we're going to be able to really change the world and change the outcomes. And, you know, I kind of joke around and say we do it one tomato at a time, but literally we do. We do it one potato, one maple leaf chicken at a time. And so that is Second Harvest.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lori. That's, you know, one of the first things that I heard out there, and this kind of aligns with when I was taking a look at your organization in preparation for this, 58% of the food today in Canada is wasted. I know that's not just a Canadian thing. I mean, that's globally is probably impacted, varying degrees, but holy cow, that's massive. And, especially today, folks, when we're talking about in the world of the COVID pandemic, I mean, seeing the trucks, delivered through the GTA, seeing like the folks out there kind of delivering and keeping up with these shipments and these meals, you all are really the true soldiers on the front line, right? In the local area. So, I'm saying it on behalf of me and Sumo, but I mean, I think probably on behalf of everybody on this line right now, thank you very much to you and your organization. That's amazing. And I even love the data-driven decision and analytics piece that you threw in there at the end to kind of cheer us up a little bit. I loved it because, you're probably going to be hit up by one of our team at some point. Probably shouldn't have said that, Lori, but no.
I assumed as much.
I really appreciate it. And folks, if anybody want to get connected with Lori or Second Harvest, then please, there's the contact detail, doing an amazing work in the GTA and beyond. So, folks, that wraps up the portion for our user group today. And, for those of you that have been on for the Workjam, that's a long haul. We really, really appreciate this. I mean, I just want to say thank you to all of you on behalf of the folks here at Sumo and also on all of our presenters. And I really want to thank, inside here, I want to thank both Angad and Eric, as well as Chris Bowman, my counterpart, the team that's kind of been able to put this user group on for all of us. Really appreciate that. And then from our three customers, Milind, Helen, and Jacob, thank you very much for leveraging that, leveraging your stories and kind of sharing with them. So with that, folks, if there are any questions that kind of bled over here, please reach out to your local teams, and we'll make sure that that we get those questions answered. Thank you, everybody, and take care.
Thank you.